Hi, my name is Jill Monroe. I'm a member of the African American Film Critics Association. Today, we are thrilled to be talking with one of the stars of Apple TV Plus's series, Manhunt, Miss Lovie Simone. Thank you for joining us. We are on the call with our members from Chicago, Reggie Ponder, Nancy Green in Los Angeles, and myself in Los Angeles. So we're going to get things started.
All righty.
What happened?
The president's been shot.
Witnesses are saying it was John Wilkes Booth. Wait, the actor?
Do you know who I am?
I'm a symbol.
How does a well-known actor commit murder in front of an audience of 1,500 people and escape?
Find the man that killed my husband.
Gentlemen, I am tasking you with the capture of John Wilkes Booth.
All of this can be broken. Hold your devil by his throat and spin him to the ground.
This is a conspiracy to dismember our government.
I know who you are, Mr. Booth.
You gonna help us or not?
There's a bounty on the head of Booth. I intend to collect.
Booth is being protected by the Confederacy.
Now with Lincoln out of the way, this country belongs to us.
I will not surrender. May God be my judge. God bless America.
Hi, Lovie. Reggie Ponder, the real critic out of Chicago. And I want to say that your character has what I want to term a quiet power, knowing kind of what battles to fight and how to be resilient. Can you speak to how you approached this character and developed her as you were kind of placed back in this time or this period that was very difficult?
There was a lot of question marks going into this character because there wasn't much written about Mary Sims as a person outside of what happened at the trial. So a lot of her life was in that trial. So for me, it was just a lot of just thinking about her intentions within, like, telling her story and just what that courage would look like forming and how long it took to develop. We've seen her in her childhood. We've established that she was not always a slave, so there is like that yearning to be free and just having her, just knowing that she's educated and a teacher and just using all of the little pieces that I did have from Mary that I tried to like incorporate into the character.
Jill Monroe, RSVP with Jill Monroe. So, Lovie, what I love about Mary and her character is that in some ways her fight, her battles are similar in a lot of ways to what Black women are still dealing with today and their steps that they're taking and the cautiousness on both sides. So can you speak to a little bit about that and the character and working through that?
Yeah, I'd like to think that a lot of Black women in America have a very similar life experience growing up, just in how they're perceived by others and how they take things in, just that alone. So just knowing that I am already one of maybe 1,000 modern girls, today, and trying to apply that back then, because that was probably more so the same back then because there wasn't that many types of life for Black people to exist in and kind of, take up space in. So I thought to myself, okay, so if Mary Sims was like this and if a slave's life kind of was shaped like this, how can I have that play a role in her life and how she developed and came up and to be who she was.
Hi, Nancy Green with Film Critique.
Hello.
Hi. And, I really found the way you played the character to be very striking. She was so strong and so interesting in the way that she dealt with things. And I wanted to know, what did you know about the character before getting this role? What did you know about her history in real life? And what have you learned since then in playing the role?
Well, thank you, first of all. Second, I didn't know anything about Mary Sims. I was like kind of upset at myself for not knowing this, but I wasn't surprised because of how we're taught about American history and just the lack thereof of like the entire story of everyone's life and what they were going through. So to me, I didn't, use that as like, ah, man, maybe, like throughout the entire process. So for me, can you say the second part of that question? Sometimes I ramble and I just.
And also, what have you learned since playing the character?
Okay, so I learned a lot. I already knew that there was no information on the Black life written down anywhere because of just, but I didn't know that there was more information on John Wilkes Booth's horse than Mary Sims' entire life. Like they knew about where the horse came from, the horse's age, all of this stuff, but they didn't know the same about a person. So just kind of putting that into consideration really tells you like of the times and why Mary Sims doing this was like such a big thing if they didn't even consider her a person, less than a horse. Yeah.
So what's really interesting, Lovey, is that I didn't know much either, but I knew that part. I did know that they knew about the horse, but they didn't know about Mary. So it's so interesting that I didn't know much, but didn't know that. The your character also seems to be a protector and a caregiver. As you look at what your character does for your brother, what tries to do for the community, can you talk about how the character had a little bit, even though you didn't know, there wasn't a lot of information about the character, that the character had a little more robustness than just being just a flat character?
Well, because Mary Sims was another thing I learned is that she was Mutt's helper. She wasn't just like his slave. Like he did go to her for information at times. So just that alone, she had a lot of experience, and I feel like she was the type of person to take that experience and share, like knowing that she was a teacher. So whatever I learn, I teach to you, even if it's not what I know. Even if the subject is not in its entirety, I know a little bit, so you're gonna know. So I do think a lot of that was happening back then too with slaves, and just how that education was kind of like given to people of all ages, back then. That was their school, like word of mouth.
Yeah, and can you speak about being a protector for your character's brother?
Yeah, I do think that family is very, very important to Mary Sims, coming from her background, not being a slave, coming from a freed family, and then, having limited family. Whatever you have and can identify to, you're going to hold on to for dear life. So I do think Mary was like, this is my brother, this is his life, I care for him, and then that's her family. So I do think it was a lot of just care for her brother, and then knowing that he wasn't as educated as her, her awareness of that was like, I do have to protect you in a way, because I know that you can be manipulated more so on the mental sense instead of the just physical.
Well, I don't know if you have siblings, but you came across realistic in that, because you like, no, you ain't. I'm gonna protect my brother. So that's
I am the oldest sibling of 4, so it was pretty natural.
Thank you so much.
I love it. So you mentioned, not learning about this, obviously a character like Mary in our educational system. And I saw a recent interview where you mentioned, had you have learned about something like this, you would have been more dialed in or tapped into, history or that subject in school. How would you go about approaching a subject matter like Mary or her character within the educational system, or bringing it up? How do you think there are ways that can be tapped in or learned from these type of experiences that we're learning about in fictional manners?
I do think just laying it all out on the table, like quite literally and as directly as possible, just to give people the room to have their own reactions and their own feelings, and then form their own questions to be answered. So, I would just say this was this time period, and this was what was going on, and this is how certain people were treated. And, I would just like make it very direct and to the point, because I feel like right now in history books, there's so much like extravagance around these like heroes that we're supposed to be, you know, following and remembering and taking, you know, yeah. So I do think I would just say it. I would just say it because I feel like that hasn't been done. And I feel like when you just say something, there is a certain level of accountability that you have to take when you just say something that white people in America have disregarded completely.
Hi again. One of the things I wanted to know is what was one of the most difficult things that you had to do in filming? And also if there was anything in this that was maybe triggering for you that, you know, once you were going through it, you were just sort of like, wow, you know.
I think the hardest and the most triggering, they kind of share it, would be just developing the dialect because of just like where it comes from and just wanting to be correct, you know, be true to the times. And then also there was like a fine line between like, you know, people perceiving uneducated people as dumb, but they're just not educated. So there was just like a whole bunch of like complexities there. And being a modern girl, I talk really fast, I think really fast. And I had to like slow that all the way down because like slaves and, you know, they took their time with things because they weren't as, you know, well versed in the dictionary, or they didn't know as many things like that we have access to now, which is, you know, the reason why I'm able to be and think like this. So that was the most challenging and a little triggering because I do know that perception is everything when it comes to Black life and telling those stories.
Nice, nice. Thank you. And it's a great show. It really is, you know.
So, Lovey, sometimes when we look at projects like this, there's a big discussion about Black trauma. It's like, do I really, really, really want to watch this? Because kind of following up on what Mary was saying is that, I mean, some of these things are triggering. You're like, oh man, no, I don't. And there's some, I don't want to give away any spoilers, but there's points in which I was just terribly disappointed and hurt and all that other type of stuff. Can you speak to why, oh, how you feel about, you know, watching and being a part of these types of projects?
Mm-hmm. I do think this one, and the reason why I accepted this job was because it was a little bit different in how it displayed Black life. It definitely did highlight the realness of the oppression, everything that, you know, comes from that, but it also didn't romanticize or try to linger in moments of like brutality. And the moments that were a bit on the more brutal or oppressive side were the moments that triggered a chain, you know, a chain reaction of events that just led to her courage being built up, her saying, no, this is not what I believe in, this is not right. So yeah, I think, yeah.
No, no, thank you. I agree with Nancy. I think that it's a very good project, but I know that that's a question that people always say, do I really want to do that? So thank you for your response for that.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of along those lines, when you are interacting with the cast and those uncomfortable moments come up, and I'm sure on the other side, it's potentially equally as, you know, potentially uncomfortable because though it's acting, it's still uncomfortable. Are there conversations that you have or that the other actors have had with you in reference to the material or how it made them feel or learning through the process from being on this project?
Yeah, before we even started filming, in the pre-production process, we all, like me, Anthony Boyle, Hamish, everybody, we all kind of like sat in this room with the director, and we were talking just about the history and just about the awareness of the times. And we were talking about Black life, and everybody had like their own input, so it did make the space feel safe. Just to know that there was like respect, and then there was like, you know, true consideration and just like open minds everywhere. So it was more so coming from a place of like, we have to tell this story right from this lens, because this lens was very particular for the time. and just even what it was about fully, the whole Lincoln assassination, and what it came from, what it turned into, was just very touchy. So it felt really good to not feel as uncomfortable as I thought I would initially.
So is that something that you typically do when you are working, if the material is difficult, maybe not just in a racial way, but just in an emotional way or difficult way, have those conversations where you kind of deep dive into it or take interest in conversations around it?
Yeah, definitely. Because heavy scenes have so many layers. There's like the surface, and then there's like right under the surface, and there's like the bottom. So it's like navigating that fully as the actor, as well as the director and the showrunner, just to make sure everybody's like natural feelings and like responses are like going together, and we all are agreeing on it. And just it's a group effort.
Hi again. Okay, so when I was watching it, there were certain scenes where when Booth was treating her a certain way, I just, you know, and I wanted to know for you, like, what was your reaction to that? And you know, given, how things are today, how do you feel maybe you would react in those types of situations versus how the character had to react given the time period?
I do think direct punishment would be a thing. I think Mary Sims was indirect punishment, which is just as graceful for her in the times. In the scenes when it was happening, in a way, actors are a bit sick. So when he did enter that space and was talking to me in that way afterwards, like when they yelled cut, I was like, geez, that was good. That was really good, even though it was like, oppressive towards me. But it was just that he captured just like all of like those like feelings, like, and you can see it not just in the words, but in the eyes and in the mouth and in like the corners of, so everything was kind of like real. So I do want real to be depicted, because I am tired of white people like who are racist, like given this humanity that is just like, oh, but so I do like that he was actually a villain in this. As well as like I think me today, yeah, you guys just know I wouldn't tolerate that. I am a modern day girl. Black woman. Yes.
Right. Thank you so much. And yeah, I lived in Maryland, and I actually went to the Greenmount Cemetery where their plot is located. And at first I was like, wait, is this the Booth? And yeah, it's very weird because it's a huge kind of monument, and I'm just sort of like, that's weird. Yeah, so but yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Lovey, I always ask this question about fun for having fun in these difficult projects. And so can you speak to how you guys had fun and moments of levity within the project?
I do think a part of the fun that actors experience is a lot of our life and how we get to the point of being in front of a camera is observing and just like really taking in like different types of people. So a lot of the fun is embodying a completely different person than like who you are. You know what I mean? So just like, if you know that you're in a room with a whole bunch of actors that are really just going to let their guard down and completely just give it to you, you know what I mean? You do not want to be yourself in that room. You know what I mean? You're like, I have to transform like right now. And that is a part of like the adrenaline and the, oh, wow, we're really going there. Like in the scene in one of the scenes that I have with Booth early on in the season, it's like, okay, we're really going there. All right. So that is a lot of the fun, because you really never know how you're gonna react. You just have a couple of directions and you're like on that line, but you don't know what you're gonna see. So that's, yeah, exciting.
And so when you say you're right on that line, so was there some improvisational moments there? I mean, when you say you don't really know what you're going to get, because you know what you're going to get overall, but you're speaking to something specific, and I want to make sure I draw that out.
Well, not even some improv does happen, but not even with improv, more so than like not every take is always going to be the same. You know, there might be a certain look that's given that changes the vibe completely in the scene, which changes your reaction completely, you know. So it's just always kind of like you have to be on your toes, because it is like mimicking life, like a situation over and over again in just a whole bunch of different realms.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Lovie, and speaking of that, Mary and Booth have some intense scenes. Which is your favorite of those scenes that sort of throughout the seasons?
My favorite is definitely, I thought it would be when she's shaving him, but I do think my favorite is when she initially meets him, only because that is that's the moment for her. You know what I mean? You know how you have those moments in your life that are so small and you don't know how far those small moments are going to take you. You know, like that started a lot for her that day, that moment. And it was nice to initially be seen as, you know, a servant, but in a different way. Like it wasn't your typical like fully subservient type of slave. It was like, oh, there might be something there with her.
Yeah.
Lovey, was there anything? Hi, I'm Gil Robertson from AAFCA in Los Angeles. Was there anything about the lives of your character in particular, but the slaves in general, that you found surprising? Because at times I was a bit, I mean, some of them seemed to move around with a certain amount of freedom that I didn't expect. But then they were in Washington, D.C. But what are your thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, not much was surprising. Yeah, not much was surprising, only because I do know a little bit about just how nasty oppression is and how much ego is in that. And I never, you know, underestimate the power of a man's ego, especially back in that time, with, you know, the world helping their delusions. So
okay, so I wanted to know, for you, what do you hope audiences will take away from the show, and how would you recommend it to people?
I would hope that audiences take away Mary Sims. I hope they you know, try and take away the fact that there was a lot of life around this American history that was not documented, and maybe to go further in on their own research and try and find more about not just Mary, but more of the people that were around this trial, because Mary was just one of the few Black people that was a part of this trial that had the courage enough to say, hey, this is what happened, and to tell her truth. So yeah, that's what I hope they take away. That, and the fact that there was a lot of kind of Law and Order, Criminal Minds kind of cat and mouse chase that you don't expect you don't expect history to be that exciting. And if they told us everything that just happened, we would have probably, you know, been interested in to begin with. So, you know, because history to a lot of young people isn't the most exciting subject.
Nice, yes. And that is an interesting part, like the whole chase thing. I didn't know that. So yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you.
Lovey, thank you for your well-crafted performance. We absolutely loved it, and we look forward to seeing more of you in the future. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film and TV critics, we thank you for joining us today, and we thank you for watching this edition of AAFCA Roundtables. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.